One element of the English language development framework that is maybe tricky, particularly for people who aren't English majors, is the idea of communication modes. And these are cross disciplinary. They apply to all content areas as well as to non content language use. And so I want to, although I'm going to have you take a look at this website they're on your own a little bit, I think, this week. I do want to just give a brief overview of what they mean by some of these things. And the framework puts language use into 5 different dimensions, 3 of which are at the discourse level, 1 of which is at the sentence level, and 1 of which is at the word or phrase level. By discourse, we can think about this as the big picture level, like this is the entire piece, the entire work. So it's not at the sentence level, it's at the entire a page level, a chapter level, a section level. And the 3 areas are organization, cohesion, and density of language. So the organization of language, the cohesion of language, and the density of language. So essentially, at the organization dimension, what we're looking for are things like how text, and I'm going to say text here, a text can be spoken, it can be written, or it could be multimodal. So at the organization level, students will understand how coherent texts are created to meet a purpose, like to inform or to entertain or to persuade, in a series of connected sentences that all relate to the topic, um, through how it is organized generally in terms of having an introduction, a body, a conclusion, how it might be organized very specifically that might be based on content area. In other words, we might organize a text in social studies different than a text in health, different than a text in science, different than a text in math. We might, for example, have certain patterns that we use a lot in a text, like a claim followed by evidence followed by reasoning, and these are supposed to link throughout the text. We might look at things like models of things like cause and effect, events and consequences. And we might look at how different genres of text, like informational text and persuasive text, might be combined even. So that's the organization of language. And I think we all understand organization as intro, body, conclusion, but it is more than that. And I also wanted to talk about that because cohesion is also what we often mean when we think of organization. And so cohesion is when we're reading something, being able to understand how the ideas in the piece are connected to each other. So that might be using synonyms and antonyms. It might be using devices that classify things into a wholes and parts or classes and subclasses, substitutions and omissions. Let's see, what else do we have here? Just various strategies that connect the ideas within the text. So that's cohesion. Are the ideas all cohesive? And then density of language is also maybe a little tricky. And it is, if you look at it on the website you're going to explore a little bit this week, it is grammatically intense. I think we could say we could easily say it's grammatically intense, but essentially think of density as you are getting a lot of ideas down there and you're doing them kind of concisely. It is packed together. And so, for example, using prepositional phrases, using embedded clauses, um, using different modifiers before and after a noun as needed. So this is, are we getting lots of ideas? And think about this a little bit as if you've learned a second language or tried to learn a second language. As you're communicating out loud in that language, your communication is pretty simple. You use lots of very simple sentences, right? As kind of like a first grade reading book, right? The dog runs. The boy reads. The girl swims. It's very simplistic. And we often struggle if we're asked and like to have meaningful conversations to get ideas there. And that's where density comes in. We're trying to make language dense by putting um, a lot of language into something and not being overly spread out. And that continues into the sentence dimension at the sentence level. And that's what they refer to as um, grammatical complexity. And so, looking how when the use of simple sentences are used, um, they can reinforce meaning. So, they give an example that comes from social studies. Sentence one: all people have needs and wants. Sentence two: this is called demand. So there we have meanings that are extended or enhanced through multiple related simple sentences. A simple sentence has a subject and it has a verb. Um, and then using compound sentences, which are sentences that typically are combined using a coordinating conjunction, like the word and, or the word or the word but. So, with the same example, all people have needs and wants, and it's called demand. I don't think that's a great sentence, but it's their example. Um, Another example with another conjunction: all people have needs and wants, but there are only limited resources. Other ways to combine clauses: whenever there is an increased demand, prices go up. Using words that signify compare or contrast. So, despite the obvious problems with equity, some people still blah, blah, blah. And then, so understand how authors combine clauses. A clause is simply a group of words that includes a subject and a verb. And how different types of sentences might create different effects. And then finally, we have precision of language. And this is at the word or the phrase level. So, using specific technical language of your content area's vocabulary, recognizing when that vocabulary differs from field to field, understanding English idioms. Some examples are given. Sit tight for something. To make a long story short is given as an example. How words could, again, have multiple meanings. So their example is division of power, which is a social studies concept, versus long division, the math concept. Um, yeah, there. So yeah, so that is essentially using the best vocabulary and an educated vocabulary without being. We'll talk about this more when we talk about vocabulary. Without going thesaurus, becoming thesaurus happy, and using synonyms that don't really fit. So that is the precision of language. And so what students are being asked to do is to both um, create that as they write and also interpret that as they read for all of these areas. Um, and that will vary. How complex we are varies by grade level. It gets simpler as we go on. And so, one thing to keep in mind too, as we talk about English language development, is that this is really often what we would think for all students, not just English learners. I mentioned that in some of my content videos, but I want to bring that up again. We, no matter what we're teaching, are also developing all of our students' language, including our students who are learning English, but also our students who aren't. And so these are good things to keep in mind. These are often things that we kind of intuitively know we want students to be able to do, um, but we often don't explicitly teach it or explicitly think about it. Many, I shouldn't say many, some districts actually want language objectives or literacy objectives along with content objectives for lesson planning. That was my experience for a time. It's not everywhere, of course, but it is something to keep in mind. This is especially important when you do have students who are learning English. But I think it is really important for all students as well. So thank you for watching this. If you have questions, please reach out, and I hope you enjoy your experiences this week.